Hi there. Let's look at what are the various ways of creating a new database in PostgreSQL database server. There are basically two different ways we can create a new database in PostgreSQL database server. The first option is using an SQL command, create database, and here is a syntax. And the second option is through a command line, option. So createdb is an executable, which in fact is a wrapper on top of this create database. Whenever you run this createdb from command line or a shell prompt, which indirectly calls this create database SQL only, whichever the way you prefer. Whether you prefer running a SQL statement to create a new database, or you are a fan of running something from command line. Let me show you both ways of doing it through an example. I am logging into a Postgres environment. If you look at, I'm connecting to the PostgreSQL and I currently have 11.5 database server version. When I say \l, I could see here three default databases. These are the databases which comes by default: Postgres, template 0, and template 1. If you don't like using \l, you can also query pg underscore database table. When you say select database name, comma respective information, or if you want encoding, this encoding 6 stands for UTF-8. Encoding 6 stands for UTF-8. Each of these databases have a unique ID. Like every object in a database has its own ID. These databases also have a unique ID. But that column is not visible here by default. But if you type a column name called OID, you can see that object ID here. This database name, template 1 is object ID 1, template 0 is object ID 13880. Postgres has a separate OID. Now if you go and see the physical location of them, these are stored under PG data base directory. When you do ls-l under PG data, this environment variable may be different in your environment. And if you look at base here, within the base, these are stored physically. If I go ahead and create a new database, the new database will also get stored under this PG data base directory. Let me go ahead and create a new database using SQL option. Before I go ahead and create a database, let's look at create database syntax. The basic syntax is create database, database name. You can specify extra options. This is a minimum thing you must specify. You can also specify extra options, such as who is the owner of this database, just in case you are creating this database for someone else. From which template database you want this database to be created. If you don't specify anything, by default it picks up from the template 1. What is the encoding? What is the collation? What is the C type? I especially did a separate recording to help us all understand the differences between encoding, collation, C type, lang. I would be posting that recording link in a notes section of this YouTube recording. If you are not comfortable in this terminology, why we are seeing, let's say, let me cancel it here and let me run the backslash L. If you are not sure why the encoding is UTF-8 here, and if you are not sure why encoding is English underscore US dot UTF-8, this terminology is clearly explained in the other recording. I highly recommend you go through it because these are most of the time confusing things. The other option is table space. It's a self-explanatory. Allow connections, connection limit, is template. So do you want this database to be created as a template database? Let me go ahead and create with the basic options. That is create database testdb1. Before that, let me one more time show you pg underscore database definition. Select OID comma dat name, database name from pg underscore database. So I got only 3 rows here. Now once I create database, let's say testdb1. If I press up arrow and repeat the select statement, this time I see 4 rows because here the database is created. Once the database is created, you see a feedback. If the database creation is not successful, you would see an error. The moment you see this create database, that means database creation is successful and a record is added in pg underscore database. If you go back to the command prompt and go to pg data and base, here you can see a directory with the name 16405. 16405. This is just a copy of template 1 database, nothing else. When you say create database, the object structures to this new database are copied from the template 1 database, just a copy of it. This is the first way of creating a database. The database creation using SQL command. Some people prefer creating the database using a command. Instead of SQL commands, some prefer Unix commands. If we say which createdb, the createdb is under user bin here. If you want to understand more about this, you can simply say --help. You would see here also the same options, right? But here you just pass the options as a command line arguments. In fact, createdb is just a wrapper on top of SQL. Instead of you submitting SQL statement, it submits SQL statement for you. So if you want to create a new database, I would simply say create database and let's say testdb2. If you don't specify the database name, it tries to create the database name with the ID. It will try to create the database name with this your ID, default login ID. Here the create database command is successful because there were no errors reported. If you list the databases using PSQL-L option, you would see this testdb2 database, the database we just created. Sounds good. Let's go to PSQL and run this command. So if I can select the up arrow to select this specific select statement. This testdb2 got a 16406. As usual, if you go to pg data and base directory, you would see a directory with the name 16406. This is the directory name, or this is the object ID of the testdb1. This is the object ID of testdb2. So in summary, there are two different ways you can create a database in PostgreSQL. One is using a create database SQL statement. Another one is using a createdb command. That actually concludes my presentation. Thank you for watching this video.